Hey everybody, my name is Mr. Hefner. So just a real quick overview of the TSI, which is now the TSIA2 since middle of the year last year. Quick overview is it basically represents kind of four sections that you look at: quantitative reasoning, algebraic reasoning, geometric and spatial reasoning, and probabilistic and statistical reasoning. So you can get to use a calculator sometimes, but it's very basic calculator usually, for function, add, subtract, multiply, divide, that sort of thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look through just a couple examples of each type from, this is created by College Board. So it is a resource that you actually have access to. You can find it, and I can show you how to find it later. And I actually have copies of these that I can just share with people if they want them from Google Drive. But so their first practice is like arithmetic thinking. So that's going to have a lot to do with like number fluency and kind of your operations with numbers and comparing numbers. Okay, so this is where you're going to have questions where you could get questions that ask about percentages and you know, adding and subtracting decimals or fractions and things of that nature. So just one real quick intro about the calculator. You get a very basic calculator, okay? The only thing the calculator will do is add numbers, subtract numbers, multiply numbers, and divide numbers, okay? And it is for function, meaning it won't even let you do a negative sign. You know, you can't do -2. So if you have a question that's like -2 plus 4, you have to get very creative with how you answer that. You could either reorder it, meaning you could put the +4 first and then do -2. Okay, so that would put the negative in there for you. Kind of you do 4 minus 2. Or there's another trick. If you want to get a negative in a 4-function calculators, you could start by doing 0 minus 2 enter, and that will put 0 minus 2 is -2. It'll tell you it's -2, and then you can add 4 to it. Okay, but there's some stuff you have to do with that 4-function calculator that, you know, to kind of use it properly and efficiently. That is very different from the graphing calculators that we're all used to. Okay, so a lot of this would just be, as you can see, you know, adding different numbers, subtracting different numbers. So like number 4, a conference planner has put together 280 binders for attendees and another 31 binders for presenters. How many total binders did they put together? You're just adding those two numbers together. Okay, so 280 plus 31. Very likely that, you know, you'd probably get a calculator on this section, but it would be just the 4-function. Okay, you wouldn't get a graphing on those for any reason. Sometimes it's like comparison stuff. So like, which of the following inequalities is true? Which one of the is 3/4 less than 5/7? You really have to think through, you know, how these fractions, what their sizes truly are. Okay, so that's kind of like the number sense stuff, you know, division of fractions, testing to see if you remember that you can divide a fraction by flipping the second one, keep, change, flip, 4 times instead of division, and then flip the second fraction, 6/1. And then remember, when you multiply, you just top with top, bottom with bottom. So 4 times 6 is 24, and 3 times 1 is 3. 24 divided by 3 is 8. But this is asking, you know, not necessarily asking you to solve it exactly, but it's saying between what two values would P be located? Well, 8 is between 7 and 9. So I would select D on that, between those two values, okay? Second thing would be quantitative reasoning, okay? This is where you get some of your probability stuff that it was talking about, geometric stuff, some algebraic stuff, but a lot of ratio and proportions and that sort of thing, and probability definitely. So you would work through a lot of this. Some students do still struggle with the probability and the statistics and the geometry piece, because that's kind of the farthest away from you. But you can see like this number 1, which of the following expressions is 5 times as much as the sum? of R and S, seeing if you remember how to write it out. 5 times as much the sum of R and S. You want to sum R and S together first and then multiply it by 5. So this last one, because of order of operations, if you do 5 times R plus S, that would, like A, that would be 5 times the first one and then add S to it. Okay, let's scroll down. So here we have some like probability and statistics stuff going on here. This is asking you for which of the following is closest to the mean of the population of these countries. So remember, with mean, mean is like average. Okay, mean is average. So average the numbers together. Okay, so the way that you average is you add up all terms. So add all terms and then divide by the number of terms there were. Okay, which would be, you know, in this case, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the largest countries in the world is what it says in the word problem. So you'd add up all those numbers in the columns and divide it by 5. Okay, so that's some probability and statistics stuff you could try in here. There's obviously some like laws of exponents, practicing with exponents. Remember, with exponents, if you're just multiplying, you add the 2 exponents. So like on this one, you would have x cubed times x squared raised to the 5th power. So first I would add those 2 together. So that would be x to the 5th. And then whenever you take a power and raise it to a power, you multiply. So you do 5 times 5, which would be 25. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on in this particular part. Lots of geometry techniques, you know, rotating figures and shapes, all of that good stuff that you could use. And then lastly, we have our advanced algebra and functions, they call it. And this is probably the one that students need the most work on, just because it does bring up a lot of factoring, quadratics, solving. This is where your polynomial equations and working with those polynomial equations would come in, exponentials and logarithms. And it still has some geometry concepts in it, but so, you know, you might have a question like function g is defined by g of x equals 3 times x plus 8. What is the value of g of 12? So remember, these are where you're wanting to actually type in, you know, plug in 12 for x when we're evaluating a function. So it would be like 3 times 12 plus 8. Okay, so 12, you do the inside first. So 12 plus 8 would be 20. And then 3 times 20 would be 60. Okay, so lots of that function type stuff going on. Kind of asking us for volume. It looks like surface area. Sorry. So, you know, I think that they kind of area of a rectangle is length times width, and then surface area, you're just thinking of how many of those that you'd have to add up to get it. Which of the following is it equivalent to this? So you would want to multiply this out, probably see what you get. That'd be a good place to start. So it's like distribution, kind of like number FOIL, but we have more than 2 terms here. So multiply it out. Some questions about functions. What graphs would match these functions, or what would be perpendicular to that line? See some exponential stuff here. Which of the following which of the following is the graph of a function? So remember, that's like vertical line test. You draw vertical lines down through it and it touches more than once. That's not a function. So not a function, not a function. Okay. Oh, look at this one. Kind of tricky. It's not a function. I mean, it is a function. Only touches once. So it's got to be C in this case. Yeah, so this one would touch twice in that area. So then you could have some factoring. Remember, we've done factoring some. quite a bit in many of your math classes. Remember, the first step to factoring would be to see if they all have a GCF. You pull the 3 out in front, and you would be left with x squared plus 2x minus 8. And then you could factor this with our normal factoring techniques. Okay, so just notice that you can give yourself a 50-50 shot right away. Pull that 3 out in front. That's got to stay there. Those don't have a 3 out in front, so they're not going to work. Okay, so just give yourself a 50-50 shot, and then do the rest of the factoring technique. They've got to multiply. It's 2 terms that got to multiply to give you -8, but add up to +2. Bigger one needs to be positive, so it would have to be. Okay, run through those techniques. Some of them, this is why it's hard, because this logarithm stuff, is difficult especially without the appropriate calculators. Okay, solving some of this stuff is difficult without the appropriate calculators, but just kind of battle through these and do the best that you can. Remember, on some questions like this, it says, for which of the following equations is x equal to 6 the only solution? Okay, this one, x is equal to 0 is the only solution. This one, x, remember, you subtract the 6, so that would be -6, so that one's out. That would be +6 and -6. It's got to be B. Yeah, it adds 6. Okay, so there's a lot of that going on, a lot of solving, a lot of function notation where you're plugging stuff in.